Hello, everybody. We're going to be getting started in just a minute. Welcome to today's webinar. All right, it's 2 o'clock. Why don't we'll go ahead and get started here. So hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on defeating quiet quitting through employee engagement and feedback. I'm Tom Holmes, and I'm joined by my colleague here, Colin Peterson, who's our Director of Client Services. So welcome to today, Colin.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to go over, a good hot topic right now.
Absolutely. And so we're going to go over a few housekeeping things first. Just so everybody knows, this is going to be an HRCI and SHRM certified webinar. So those codes, I'm sure as many of you know, come right at the end of the session. So after about 45, 50 minutes, we'll go ahead and put those codes up on the screen. Be sure to screenshot those because we are not allowed to send them out in the slides after the webinar. We're not allowed to keep them in the recording either. So just to be in compliance there, make sure you either write them down, take a picture with your phone, whatever you need so you can get the proper credit with both HRCI and SHRM. Some other notes, as I just mentioned, the slides will be sent via email along with the recording in about 1 to 2 days. So for those of you that are listening again that might want to review it again, we're going to send that out. And obviously, if you have any friends or anyone else that wasn't here or you want to share it, feel free to do that as well. We at HelloTeam love to make these kinds of things interactive. So ask as many questions as you want. Don't feel like there's a proper time or place to ask them. You can put them right in the Q&A, right in the chat. We'll make sure we get to as many as possible. We are probably going to save most of the questions for the end of the webinar today, if we have time. But if we were able to answer them in chat while we're going through the, product demo or anything like that, we will. Okay, so we're all here for a reason, right? And it's because every time we open up our computers, our LinkedIn, our letters from SHRM, we see this term quiet quitting coming up again and again. It's one of these newer trends in HR that's really been probably going on for a very long time, but it's just now starting to get a lot of attention. So what exactly is quiet quitting and why is it not new? So quiet quitting, as some of you might know, is the act of an employee doing the bare minimum to stay at a job they don't like, solely for a reason of earning a paycheck, right? So we all hope as HR professionals that when employees come to work, they're here because they believe in the mission. Obviously, they want to make money, but also because they care about themselves, their growth, and the company's growth as well. Quiet quitting kind of takes a different angle on that, where the employee's showing up just for that paycheck and is not that involved in the growth of the company or even in the growth of themselves at the company. So how do you tell quiet quitting? We see this a lot. Being an HR tech company, a lot of people come to us and they're trying to combat things, like quiet quitting with tools like ours. So some of the warning signs that we always talk about looking out for, there's really 3 of them that every leader, every HR professional can see as the telltale red flags that someone is thinking of quiet quitting or is actually in the act of quiet quitting currently. So first is going to be withdrawal, second is going to be apathy, and the third is going to be negativity. So what we mean by withdrawal is you have an employee who all of a sudden is changing their behavior. They don't want to take part in things like team meetings. They don't want to take part in peer events. And they're also not seeking the advice of their leaders. They're not seeking growth in the company. Think of them as being separate from the workplace. They're showing up, sure, but they don't care about being a part of the culture. And the second is going to be apathy. So when we talk about apathy, this is that part that you hear a lot of people when they talk about quiet quitting are talking about that bare minimum. So apathy is a sudden change. Once again, you're going to see that word come up a lot because quiet quitting is a sudden change in employee behavior, where all of a sudden someone who maybe was once a rock star employee, really cared, did all their work on time, and was really good about the work that they turned in, is all of a sudden careless, or they're showing a really poor work ethic, or they're not really interested in the final product of their work. So I use the example because, I work with the sales team here at HelloTeam of if you're in sales and you go on every meeting, but you don't actually care about how those meetings contribute to getting a new client or earning a new business or something like that. But this can look different for a lot of different positions. Just generally, you're going to see that change. That's the thing you want to look for, is people not working as hard as they used to, but also not working as careful as they might have once before. And the third is going to be negativity. And this is really the biggest sign. It may seem obvious, but employees who are quietly quitting have a general negative attitude towards the company, maybe their manager, their peers. They're not looking positively on their experience at work. And it's almost like a why does any of this matter sort of attitude towards what they're doing. So this can be especially concerning if it's a change over time. Maybe once again, you had an employee who, when you hired them, was super involved in the mission and really excited to watch the company grow and really happy to be a part of this team. But slowly you notice a decline where they start to say, do I matter here? Am I growing the right way? Is this the right company for me? And obvious signs of this, are very clear to a lot of managers, but others might be a little more hidden. The apathy thing is something we can all see and it's right in front of us. But negativity, I think, requires a very proactive approach. You have to see how employees feel and if they're happy with the work that they're doing. And that's something I know Colin's going to tell us a little bit about later in the session. So by showing this negativity, and this is the biggest sign, employees are just attempting to justify their imminent departure. So they're sitting in that seat, and by looking at everything poorly, it's saying when I leave here and when I leave here suddenly, it's because of all of these things that are wrong and I didn't need to do anything to fix them. There was nothing I could do. So quiet quitting and employee engagement have a really unique relationship. They go hand in hand. A lot of people are disengaged at work, especially now. We keep talking COVID over these last 3 years, but employee engagement is not a new phenomena. It's existed for many years. I think a lot of people working remote has amplified that. And over 18% of American workers are actively disengaged in the work that they're doing. And that number continues to climb, whether we're in the pandemic or even in these post-pandemic times that we're in now. So we have some stats we put together today. I won't bore you with too many of those, but quiet quitting is a rampant problem. So when you see it, it's not just headlines on LinkedIn or, like I said, in that SHRM newsletter. This is a real problem that a lot of companies are facing, and a lot of workers are actively thinking about taking these routes out because it's the safe approach to finding a new job in an uncertain economy while doing the bare minimum at this one, giving you that time to look without quitting or getting fired or anything like that. And obviously, we're all HR people. We know how expensive it is to replace an employee. So the cost, because we've done studies on this too at HelloTeam, to replace an employee is roughly 2 times their annual salary. So if you have somebody making $50,000 a year, it will cost you at least, on average, $100,000 to replace that employee. To US businesses, this means over $1 trillion every year. And globally, you can imagine that number is significantly higher. So what can you do about all this? That's where Colin's going to come in and tell about all the great things that him and his team do and how using technology can be a big path towards fighting quiet quitting at your company.
Absolutely. And Tom's done a great job kind of outlining, all of the same scenarios that I'm sure all of us are seeing, in our positions every single day. And what a lot of people are looking for is really that kind of engagement and ability for people to understand that sometimes there, is an opportunity for growth. So what we see is that there is actually a 3-step approach. And Tom, if we move forward here, really we can focus in 3 areas: feedback, engagement, and employee development. So really with feedback, people are looking to have consistent conversations with employees about their metrics, about their performance. And this is something that it's really good to be proactive with throughout the year. Still, one of the kind of most common performance cycles is still doing an annual performance review. It's a very easy way to do it. Unfortunately, that leaves 11 months for people to not hear about how they're doing, have to worry about how they're doing. So that opportunity to have really clear, consistent feedback from manager and employee. It also lets managers know, in an instance where quiet quitting is happening, when they're seeing that productivity, performance is starting to slip and decline, they're seeming disengaged, they're able to stop that right at the beginning. Rather than waiting until that full end of year where they're giving that traditional feedback. The second area is going to be around employee engagement. So ensuring productivity is recognized and then also rewarding that productivity. Engagement kind of comes in a lot of different areas. Sometimes it's just keeping people in the know, what's happening in their organizations, what's happening in their teams. It comes with kind of recognition and reward programs that people have put in place. One of the key things that we've seen with kind of programs and systems like that, where people become really engaged, it also makes it really easy to identify who's not participating in that kind of programming. That's going to be a good sign and indicator that these are kind of disengaged employees. And the last one is development. How are we kind of making sure that we're developing and growing employees within our own companies, giving them opportunities to enhance their skill sets, put people on growth plans, understanding that if I'm an employee here, I know what it takes of me to kind of get to that next position, and that I've seen others do it before, so I know that it's realistic and possible. Tom mentioned a good point here where a lot of that does come down to kind of needing a system in place, whether that's kind of through technology, through different software platforms. Obviously, with my role in kind of client services, we deal a lot with customers who use our solution and are looking for how do we solve some of these problems that we've talked about here, and make sure that we're kind of, really stemming that, especially voluntary turnover right at the beginning. So we can kind of jump in and kind of take a look at it today on, what's out there, what are people doing, and kind of give you some ideas, whether it's in HelloTeam or not, on kind of how you're able to bring a lot of these topics together into one unified process for people to do it. So we'll go ahead and share here.
And we'll make this conversational. If anyone has questions, put them in the Q&A, put them in the chat. We're going to run some polls throughout this too, so we'll stop and talk about those along the way.
Absolutely. So really, one of the big areas is having an opportunity for people to know when some of these milestones are being able to be recognized. People really appreciate, especially with voluntary turnover, if you're seeing that there's been people at the organization there for a while, not everybody's, turning over in that first year, which really kind of creates that disengagement. Having something to kind of call that out and recognize that is really important. The other part that kind of Tom mentioned earlier too is when people feel like their kind of productivity is being rewarded and recognized, it keeps them involved, it keeps them part of that group, and makes sure and reinforces that it goes back to furthering that growth of not only the company, but themselves as well. So, in HelloTeam, we have an area called High Fives. Here, you're able to recognize any number of people at a time, whole company, whole department. And with that, they're able to get notifications, see that they're recognized, even potentially kind of cash that out for gift cards for people that want to. Creates kind of an engaging ecosystem, within the actual tool itself that then can integrate into all of your common kind of HR tools that you're on.
And Colin, if I could real quick, we do have a question from the audience that I think is really appropriate for what you're talking about. So Miles chatted in and said that he works at a manufacturing company and quiet quitting is prevalent, even with the wage increases and the engagement activities you're doing. So wanted to know if we have any tips or advice for manufacturing companies specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. So manufacturing is going to be one of the biggest industries that you're going to see quiet quitting happen, because it's kind of a lot more easier to kind of hide in that environment, especially where it's less kind of teamwork oriented. So one of the big things that we've seen people do is really lean on a rewards tool. The big piece of that is, of course, you're able to have that recognition for milestones. You as the organization isn't going to be able to forget about birthdays, about their work anniversaries. Having, somebody just chatted in that they have an unsung hero monthly award. That's going to be a great opportunity. One of the things Sheila just chatted in too about using tools like Slack, using it like Microsoft Teams. It's definitely a great start to be able to have that, especially if people are using that really often. One of the challenges that we've seen in systems like Slack is for a lot of people that are kind of heads down working during the day, you end up muting occasionally those channels that are more kind of company news, recognition oriented. And then by the time you kind of unmute that, go back, people typically aren't kind of looking through that. So there's a kind of big opportunity that you might have missed some of these great things. And that's why I think people really like tools like HelloTeam, is that that's going to now be archived. And one of the things we're going to talk about next around that feedback is that recognition actually directly kind of flows over into their performance piece. So people have all that recognition info directly there when it's time to give that feedback.
And Miles, going back to your question too, because I think that's a really important thing. So this is general advice for the audience. I mean, we're, obviously a little biased, but not biased here at HelloTeam on which tool is best. But I think whatever you're doing, it's very important that it's accessible to a large audience. So especially in manufacturing, you have people that aren't on desktop. You have people that might need to check things on their phones or in a break room. Colin, is that something we're able to facilitate with a tool like this?
Yeah, it's absolutely a great piece to bring up is accessibility in general. Whether it kind of, supports, depending on where you are in the country, multi-language support, being able to access it on any mobile device. It's one of the big reasons HelloTeam's prioritized mobile apps for iOS, for Android devices. Everything's available in any language, so people are able to get it, even if English isn't, their most comfortable language to speak as well.
And Elizabeth brought up a great question that we can touch on real quick, which is the difference between appreciation and recognition. I love that question. It's a great one, Elizabeth. I think personally, the way that we look at appreciation is that's more of a top-down approach. That's more of your manager saying, hey, thanks for, meeting this deadline. Thanks for going that extra mile. I really appreciate your help and I appreciate the work that you're putting in. But recognition is more of a peer-to-peer approach. It's more of not just top-down, but all the people around you. So when we think about people being recognized and being really a part of the culture that they're working in, you want to see a culture where people are being recognized not only for their work achievements, but also for their professional achievements and their personal achievements, like a birthday or a work anniversary. But what's important, and I think the difference is where it comes from. So recognition, we try to think of, and that's when you have peers involved, you have your coworkers involved, whereas appreciation is the thing that is the bare minimum. I would say the barrier to entry, where that's just a manager showing you that you're valued for the work that you're putting in.
Yeah, it's a great piece. And really from there, we can kind of transition almost into the feedback part. So, how important is that we're developing? How important is that they are understanding that they're also for them? One of the things that we've seen really take off since COVID, because, previously, if we were all in offices, it was easy to schedule time. In HelloTeam, we have a great tool here around one-on-ones. These directly integrate in with calendars. People are able to report on it. Managers know when these are happening. And then from here, as HR, you're able to set up different templates, different questions for managers and employees to go over. One of the big challenges that was really brought forward in the remote environment is when people took that step to become first-time managers and they weren't in an office to really understand and be coached how to do that. A lot of the development of people underneath them suddenly really struggled because they didn't know how to have these development conversations. They may not have been as prepared for what to talk about in some of these one-on-ones. So here it gives you an opportunity to give that info out around best practices. And then directly within the tool, you're able to kind of take a look at, like we just looked at, what it takes to be recognized. They can look at any goals that may have happened for any employees, see how they're progressing in those goals. And then, of course, when it comes time for those performance reviews that we talked about, you're also able to see, what are some of these historic performance reviews that maybe we want to touch up on. So it brings all that information in together, making sure that you're able to have really important development conversations that are trackable, so that when employees come to you and say, hey, I don't know if I've gotten, that type of feedback from my manager before, you're always able to go in and actually check for yourself. And I know Tom just put up a great question on how are people conducting, feedback processes today, whether that's reviews, whether those are one-on-ones, goals. really kind of take a chance to go in there and kind of see, how are you handling some of these processes today?
I appreciate all these answers coming in. A lot of you are doing things on paper, or doing it through your HRIS system. Few of you aren't doing anything at all. It's very good.
Yeah, there's always a kind of place, to be looking at, what is that cost benefit part? I know when Tom was talking about it earlier, there's kind of that huge cost of, not only that turnover cost, but also in your own departments where, a lot of you, I'm sure, are kind of swamped certain parts of the year between open enrollment, between, handling performance reviews manually, trying to engage your employees manually, really kind of looking at, some solution out there that's able to ease that burden a little bit on you so that you're able to be more proactive and less reactive around some of these topics.
And feedback's really important in defeating quiet quitting. Obviously, it's in the title of the webinar, but fundamentally, I think whatever process you're using, it's important to at least have a process, right? And it has to be a regular process. Colin, how often do you see clients giving performance reviews and doing things like this? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? What does that look like?
So that's what we were saying. Performance in general is becoming a much more frequent, process. It's one of the main reasons that, annual reviews now just aren't enough. For the most part, people are looking at, at least every 6 months having reviews with frequent one-on-ones happening between them, especially with the newer generation going into the workforce. People are looking for that feedback. They're looking at, how do I develop? How do I grow in my career? And they're not willing to wait that full year. So even by having that process, it's opening yourself up that not only are you kind of having the people quiet quitting, but you run a risk of losing those potential high performers that are looking to continue to grow to organizations that are going to give them that feedback to continue growing and developing. It's one of the big reasons why we've made a big kind of push, and we make it as easy as possible for everybody looking to do performance in HelloTeam, that they're able to set it up in a single click. They can have it as often, all the way down to daily. That's a little excessive. I wouldn't want to be doing that myself. But you're easily able to switch to, something where it's monthly, quarterly, semi-annually. And, easily I'm able to enroll the entire organization, whole departments, if it's something specific to them, and immediately get them in for self-evals and manager evals. Self-evals are also a really great opportunity, to identify and detect quiet quitting, because typically when you're having those self-evals, people are kind of really reflecting on where are they looking to develop, where are they looking to get better at. And if you're seeing, hey, I'm doing okay, I think, and that's it, that's going to be somebody who may not be totally engaged or looking to kind of grow as heavily as you might want them to.
And Sheila brings up a great point. And I know we're not here to sell you on HelloTeam today, so we won't talk too much specifically about the product, but Sheila brought up a point about doing quarterly performance check-ins and then using those to influence a work anniversary review. So I'll let Colin explain how to do that, but I will just give a quick plug that we are the only system out there that can actually align things to work anniversary reviews. So if that's how your company's doing it, it can be a good way to accomplish it.
Yeah, so everything, of course, is always able to be done on anniversary. I know a lot of people are switching to that method to avoid the entire company being inundated with tons of reviews at the same time every year. So you're easily able to still do regular frequent check-ins, but have that be based off of anniversary dates. The other really good part, because that's really taxing if you're doing it manually, doing anniversary date, it's very difficult. The good part by having it all digital, you're able to go in, take a look at the data, always brought up to you, whether you're doing it all at once or whether you're doing it on anniversary dates. And you're able to see who are the top performers in our organization, who are people that may be falling behind. I can even identify that down to certain manager groups. So, manager A's group of employees seems to be doing better than manager B. Is it because of the manager? And the good part about having it digital, again, is you don't have to do all of that pre-work, putting it into Excel, trying to make sure that you put it in right. It just took you 2 months to do that, and now you're able to start giving feedback on it. It's already too late. People don't really want to talk about it anymore. Using this, you're able to deliver that feedback as soon as those responses come in for your reviews. So it makes it a really easy process. and still, of course, have all those regular levels of compliance that you're looking for, like e-sign, approvals, everything. But definitely makes it a really easy process by having all of these things all together.
And I'll bring up our friend Miles again, who works for the manufacturing company. So, you asked about things that you can be doing to defeat quiet quitting aside from engagement. Well, performance and feedback is just as important. And I know in manufacturing groups, because I talk to a lot of them, that can be especially hard because you have managers on the floor, you have employees on the floor. They're not sitting behind a computer. They've never done these types of formalized feedback sessions. That's why, however you do it, it's important that you make it flexible and that you don't make it complicated for managers to complete. It should be very low lift, very easy. Something they could even do on the go.
Absolutely. That's again why one of our big pieces is always accessibility. Any reviews that people are doing in HelloTeam, one-on-ones, everything. We always want to make everything available on the go. They can do it on their phones, so that we're not having them come to a computer station in the break room and complete it. We want to make it as easy as possible. One of the last pieces again that we talked about was really the engagement part. So talking to engagement is a really great piece that comes with really frequent feedback that we're getting from employees. One of the things that we saw come up be pretty popular right when COVID started was people were doing weekly pulse checks. That seemed to be really overwhelming for people because they were constantly giving feedback, but nothing was being done about it. So there's really finding that medium where you're doing it frequently enough to get really good feedback, but enough that you can actually take action on it. HelloTeam is another great tool, similar to performance reviews. You're able to set it up on a regular recurring basis. You can do it any frequency you'd like, whether it's to the whole company or to certain people, and you're able to get, again, that instant feedback. And I know Tom put up another great kind of poll here around if anybody is doing any type of surveys, whether they're using any kind of free tools out there today, doing anything on paper, or if they're not doing anything at all.
And not to throw us off our game a little bit, but Sheila put another great point in that, do you need to have a scoring system to have analytics? Are you going to be able to look at things like needs improvement or excels at within a review without necessarily having everybody be on that 1 to 100 scale?
Yeah, and you absolutely don't even need any kind of scoring if that's not part of any culture. The important part is that you're kind of reflecting on it, and then you're still able to look at how those results kind of come in afterwards. But it's definitely a great piece. On here as well, when you're looking at surveys, the other important part, you're able to go anywhere that you'd like, whether it's active, you're able to look up any specific reviews that are happening. And then from there, you're able to see, how does this change over time? Am I kind of in the right realm? Is our data trending up in the right direction? I can look at this also by certain departments. That's going to be one of the big differences with Google surveys, with free tools like SurveyMonkey, Microsoft Forms, is because we have all of that data from your core HR systems. People don't need to self-report on it, but it can still be anonymous enough where if HR only has 2 people, we can still make that anonymous for those groups so they can still feel like they're able to give that feedback, but not be kind of targeted because of that.
I know we've all been there where someone mistypes something in a survey or a response form and it can mess up all the reports, and then you have to spell check it and fix it. This should help avoid that, right, Colin?
Absolutely. And it makes it really easy when you're comparing data over time of, we made a shift and then we were starting to see people were disengaged. We added, like we talked about, maybe a rewards and recognition program. And now we're seeing that people are far more engaged. We can know quantitatively that this was a good decision and really build out that ROI for further kind of programming in there. The other thing I'll show you as well is, you can also look for tools that can benchmark against, certain industries or sizes. So in HelloTeam, we offer kind of benchmarked engagement data. One of the really great parts about that is when you're doing some of these early surveys, you can see how you compare to maybe, companies in your industry, companies in your size range. You can see what departments specifically in what areas are doing well. I can see finance here is maybe very much disengaged. And it helps identify the specific areas for specific departments, or even, locations, different teams that are clearly having that problem. The other good part is as you do more and more surveys in HelloTeam, you're also going to be able to see how am I doing compared to the last time I ran this survey. Now I just did 7 points higher, and I can see that I'm kind of continuing to develop from there. So it gives you a good benchmark of, where am I? How much work do we have to do? Is this something that we can be comfortable in terms of where we are now? Or are there early indicators that we really need to make some changes quickly, or this could start affecting our business pretty soon?
And I think it's important to run these frequently. I know that Colin and I have seen this a lot, even in our own, travels talking to HR people. It's really powerful to be doing these more than just once every other year, once every 5 years. If you can get a baseline score before you implement any new programs or any measures to defeat quiet quitting, then you can actually do it 6 months from now, 3 months from now, and see if your changes are working.
Absolutely. It's the easiest way, doing something every 3 months, every 6 months, especially as you're kind of rolling out maybe new benefits, different programs. It's a really great way to understand, are these changes that we think are going to make a positive impact actually making that impact that we're expecting to see? And then, of course, one of the other pieces of engagement is kind of knowing where people are, having an org chart that kind of automatically stays updated for people, able to get a lot of kind of profile info, seeing where they are kind of in that org chart is something that a lot of employees really appreciate, because it gives them that kind of comfort of knowing where I am in this organization, how do I fit into it all, and having the kind of pieces there that are necessary for me to know, hey, if I'm Charlie, I know, these are the next 2 logical steps for my development and how I continue growing.
So Colin, one of the ways we talked about fighting quiet quitting was through development. Is there any tips you can give us on how to develop employees, how to know where they're at with their skills and their abilities, and how to help them, get to that next level?
Yeah, the important part is really, first building out that, retention piece around, hey, how do we know what skills people have? Once we have a good baseline around, what do people have? What do people not have? One of the things that we see, work really well, especially with engaging people in a way that, makes sense to them, that they're getting something out of it, is pairing up maybe people who are looking for in developing maybe their Adobe. I can look for people that are maybe, beginner and maybe want to advance that. And if that's a skill that the company is also looking to develop, because you're realizing that we may need somebody in the next 6 months to be good at that, we can kind of partner people up, mix people with what they're looking for, to make sure that we're developing them in a way that makes sense for those employees. One of the best things you can do that doesn't cost any money is developing employees' skills. They like to do it. If somebody is actively in a project that's developing something for them to get better at, they're probably not a candidate that's quiet quitting. They're not somebody who's disengaged, because they can clearly see, what's in it for me. This is how I'm specifically benefiting beyond just a paycheck. But overall, that gives you kind of a quick, view into, HelloTeam, and really some of the areas that we're working on, with customers, with prospects, with people that we talk to every day around, what can we do out there to, make employees, more engaged, increase their productivity, keep them around so we spend less on our recruiting and training, and kind of create an even better work environment where we have a large percentage of engaged employees working towards, one common objective.
That's awesome. Colin, do you have anything in the tool, or is there anything our clients are doing around training today, or anything they can do to facilitate training, any tools to make that easier?
Absolutely. So within HelloTeam, we also offer a full learning management system. One of the biggest areas that kind of makes it easier, you're able to do full onboarding training programs. You're able to do annual compliance training. Again, with the idea that it gives you one area, you're able to report on everything, make sure that people are completing the kind of necessary trainings. You're also even able to set up a training repository where you're able to allow employees to take certain courses at their leisure, let them develop in their own time, and even start advocating for themselves around maybe taking management courses and then coming back 6 months later saying, hey, I may be ready for that promotion. We also do offer specific content. I saw a question from Elizabeth about content within an LMS. One of the biggest objections I think we hear about learning management systems out there today is that's great. You have a software piece, but if you don't have any content that's kind of pre-built in it, that just adds to my job even more. The really best part about us, we offer a full kind of training library. There's over 550 courses in professional development, management training, even certain levels of compliance like sexual harassment prevention, all within that catalog that you have immediate access to anytime you'd like. So you're not just getting an additional software piece that adds work to your plate. You're able to immediately get started, make a difference, and allow those trainings to be available to your team overnight.
Absolutely. And we're not going to plug our tool too hard today, but one of the great things too about having that catalog is a lot of companies will use training as a means to an end, right? A lot of states, I'm sure many of the states you're in right now, require you to do training around sexual harassment, abusive conduct prevention, or even diversity if you're in some of the other states. Those are things that HR has budgets for because it's required by law. But what we're providing too, and one of the great things about our catalog is we've built it to include so much more than that. Like Colin mentioned, there's hundreds of courses around things like communicating with employees, how to use Microsoft Word and Excel. So training things, even at, for example, a manufacturing company that you might want to get people's skill sets to that next level is going to help them want to stay with your company. It's going to retain them. It's going to put them on that track to maybe not even management, but just being senior employees in the roles they're in now, which can go a long way towards making sure they don't leave for a job that's, might seem better to them somewhere else.
The last question I know from Elizabeth, you're also able, of course, adding any content. We want to make sure that you're able to put in any of your own training docs. That's why I mentioned onboarding. Great tool, automatically get people into your training program that can be audited, tracked. The other good part about digital training, and make sure that it is consistent all the time. So, we've all had those Mondays where, we're just tired, we're beat up. It's like, oh, do I have to be at work today? And, I'm responsible for onboarding 10 new hires in our training class. I may not do as great of a job as something where it's kind of pre-published, pre-recorded, and gives you exactly that level of kind of QA to make sure that people are getting trained the right way all the time. So you're always able to add any of your own content, in at least our LMS and hopefully in all of them.
And I love all the product questions. This is the most engaged group with the products I think we've had on a SHRM webinar. So it's great that you guys are gravitating here. I did put out a poll just in case anyone wants to learn more about HelloTeam's employee retention platform. We do a lot of these types of webinars, but if you want to give us a yes or a no, let us know if you're interested on that poll. It's still going to be open for another minute or so. I know we're wrapping it up a little early. But that's because we want to be able to answer questions and reserve sort of this last 10, 15 minutes to talk about things that, the audience might want to talk about.
Absolutely. And I know we saw a few kind of answers come in here around like communication from top down. It's absolutely right. Transparency makes things a lot easier for people to absorb, understand why you're doing the things you are. And it makes those kind of sometimes assumptions go away. If people know why you're making the decisions you are, they don't need to kind of create their own reasons in their head about why you're making those decisions. And it doesn't give them that opportunity to become disengaged by almost coming with a wrong thought process. Another kind of answer here that we had was, really creating a great work environment, putting people at the center of the company. It's absolutely a great way to make sure that your employees are retained. Respect, I think, is one of the biggest things people can give because it makes them feel like they're valued, they're part of the kind of company. they're getting, just as much in as they're putting in. So it's a great way to make sure that people are always, engaged as well.
Sheila put in a great question. Definitely want to talk about this a little bit. Sheila asked if they're doing the bare minimum for their job, are they still getting put on PIPs? And I will say personally, and I'm sure Colin will have something to add to this, that's the whole danger of quiet quitting, is they're doing just enough to not get fired. So in a lot of companies, it's not quite at the level of having a PIP or being PIP worthy, I would say, as an employee. But dangerous enough where, they're doing the bare minimum, collecting a paycheck, and usually impacting the attitudes and the productivity of those around them. Colin, not sure if you had anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's a really great, piece to mention is sometimes the big negativity of, quiet quitting. And one of the most dangerous pieces that's there is typically when people stop producing at a certain output, that work isn't necessarily not going to get done. It's going to be being gotten done by your highest producers. They're going to pick up that slack to a certain level, and it's going to create that kind of toxic work environment that becomes contagious. And again, like Tom mentioned, it's they're doing that bare minimum, but that's going to lead those high performers that are picking up that slack to become burned out, to become also looking for other roles. So it's important to be identifying and making sure that we're keeping that productivity, equitable and across the board for different people.
And I know one of the things we practice pretty religiously here internally at HelloTeam is, and Colin might laugh at this, is having conversations with no objective. And I think when you have a lot of direct reports, it's really important to call them, see how their day's going, even if you don't have anything work specific to talk about, because it's going to make them feel a part of it. We're all remote here at HelloTeam. Sometimes we get together in an office, but on those days we're not, we want everybody to feel like they're part of the mission and they're part of what we're achieving. And so even just those, what seems like pointless conversations can make an employee feel like my manager took the time to talk to me and they took the time to tell me what's going on. Awesome. Well, I think, I don't know if there's any other questions coming in today. If not, we'll give everyone some time back. As I said before, we do a ton of these webinars, so please, definitely stay tuned for more of them. Follow us on social media. If you did want to learn more, you wanted to request a demo, and you said yes to that poll, we will be reaching out to you very soon to kind of talk further. If you wanted to learn after the fact, feel free to visit our website at helloteam.com. I did see Margarita put in that the program ID is not working for HRCI. Sometimes the systems take a little bit after the event to process it, and I think that's true for HRCI and SHRM. So I'd recommend everyone, if it didn't work today, try it again tomorrow. If not, feel free to email me at tom@helloteam.com, and I'll put that in the chat as well so everybody has it.
Great. Well, everybody have a great rest of your day.
And thank you so much, Colin, for joining us today. And thank everybody else for joining us to learn about quiet quitting.